Hi and welcome to PolyOriginals with Fiona Abel-Smith. Today I thought I'd show you how to do a kaleidoscope cane. It's something that I know a lot of people have asked me about and something that I do a lot of. And a lot of people find it very hard to approach a kaleidoscope cane or think it's very scary, but it's like most things with polymer clay. As long as you follow a few straightforward rules, it's actually not that bad. Over the last few months I've done you various videos to make canes, and what I'm going to do today with the kaleidoscope cane is to use some of those videos and to reference them. So rather than having to do a kaleidoscope cane from scratch, I can simply refer you back to the other videos to watch, and hopefully some of you might have already made some of those canes, so we'll have some leftovers to use as well. Before I start the cane, as I mentioned in how I choose colours for a kaleidoscope cane, I have just done myself a quick Natasha bead just to check that all my colours were working. This is how the Natasha bead came out, so I was quite happy with the colour combinations. However, I liked it particularly where there was a lot of dark next to the bright colours, and there's also not too much in the way of the white in the middle. So that's something I will concentrate on when I'm putting my canes together. So I've made all my canes beforehand. As I say, these are all referenced with videos that I've done previously, so I'll just show you what I've done so far. So here are the canes I've made, and these are the amounts of clay I've used for each one. I'm using Fimo Soft for this today, but all of the clays work equally well for this. For me, Soft is nice. It's a nice all-round clay because it's not too bad to work with if you've got problems with your hands, but it still keeps a nice pattern within the kaleidoscope. But also for me, which is quite important, it slices nicely when the cane is finished, and it hasn't got that pull or that drag on it that some of the clays have. So just to take you through the videos that I've used and the canes that I've made, starting here with a rose cane. This one comes from Making and Covering a Polymer Clay Pen from Scratch video, and in that I don't just show you how to make the pen, but I also show you how to do the rose cane. So this one's from here, and the amounts that I've used today, these are quarters of the 2 ounce pack, so a quarter of the 57 grams. So effectively that's half an ounce or 14 grams of clay. So all of these big blocks are those. And for this one I've used the raspberry, the sunflower and the white. I then made this petal cane, and this is from the Petal Cane with Inset Detail free online tutorial, and for this I've used quarter packs again of the plum, the raspberry again and the white. You'll notice throughout these I've actually chosen 4 different colours to use as my main colours, and then I've got a dark and a light, and I do that very often when I'm doing kaleidoscope cane. Make sure I've got a dark, a light and then some mid colours, and then I'll make various canes using just a combination of those colours. So going back to the petal insert, as I said, plum, raspberry and white, and then for this middle insert I've done the apple green with white, and then this is the Windsor blue, the nice dark Windsor blue. This is the Polymer Clay Curved Blend Cane tutorial, and for this one I've mainly used a blend from the green, the white, yellow, but with a touch of the Windsor blue in there as well. And then the final cane I made, this is from the Snowflake Cane Part 2, which is the first one I did, so a lot of you may not have seen that one, but it's quite a fun one to do, and I will use this technique quite a lot in kaleidoscopes. And again I've used the apple green, the white and the sunflower yellow. So those are the canes, all the canes I've used, and then I'll come on to those in more detail just to show you how I did those now. So cane 1 was the rose cane, and what I did was make a skinner blend going from the raspberry through the yellow into the white, and so it's full instructions there on the covering the clay pen tutorial. And what I've ended up with is a nice clay cane there that I've made. It's about 2 inches in length, so about 5 centimetres, and I've done all of my canes in that same proportion. So that's cane number 1. I made a skinner blend from the purple through to the pink through to the white, And then for the insert, you've got a Skinner blend from the green to the white and then covered with an outside layer of the blue. And again, that came out like that. That is 2 inches 5 centimetres in length, and so that's cane number 2. Cane number 3 was the curved blend cane tutorial. What I did do though, as those of you who've done this one might have noticed, I didn't go all the way through to the end. I stopped this when I just curved it to get the one curve in the middle, rather than do it for the second time. And when I was doing the blend, I did the green through to the white, through to the yellow in a Skinner blend in that order. But then when I was doing it, I thought there probably wasn't enough differentiation between those to make the curved blend. So I just added a tiny bit of the dark blue to one end of the green in a slight swirl, and that's how I've got this nice dark green here, which just gives a little bit of an extra definition to that pattern. So that's cane number 3. Cane number 4 was the Snowflake part 2, and again this was the green with white in the middle through to the yellow, done as a Skinner blend. And then you need an extra quarter block, so an extra ½ ounce or 14 grams of clay, and that was to cover around the outside. And so if you watch the Snowflake Cane tutorial, you'll figure out how to do that one and where I've used the extra white for. So those were all the main canes done, or I should just showed you. So those were the other 2 that are done, again the same length. So they're all going to be the same length when I put my pieces together, so that 2-inch length. And what I then had left was some green, some of the blue, some white and a bit of the purple. And I'm going to use these. Remember when I said, when I did Natasha bead, I like the fact I've got the dark here around the other colours. So I've got some dark places here, so I'm just going to put some plain colours into my kaleidoscope. But then I've also got a couple of little Skinner blends I've just done here quickly, so I can add those in as well if I find gaps when I'm putting my cane all together. All in all, this worked out to be about 5 of these small packs, 2-ounce packs, 57-gram packs of clay. So that's what I need. And obviously if you've got smaller clay canes, use whatever you've got to hand. The main tip is when you're first starting off, they all need to be the same height when you're starting to put your cane together. And now we've got all those canes done, I will start doing just that and putting it all together. The tools we're going to need today are very few and far between because we've made most of the canes, and the tools you need to make all the canes will be in the individual videos. But to create the Kaleidoscope cane, I use a measuring sheet. It doesn't have to be a particularly size measuring sheet, but certainly something that's laminated works really well, and you'll see why as we move on. A roller, I use this both for rolling the cane when we've taken slices, but also when I put the cane together to create shapes, negative shapes, and again that will make sense as we go through. A knitting needle, because you could always comes in handy again when I'm actually putting the slices together. Obviously a tissue blade to take down slices of the Kaleidoscope cane, and then when I'm putting all the slices together I just use a small piece of baking parchment because it's easy to put the slices on there, and then you can manipulate this and turn it round, so it's easy getting to all the slices you need. So that's it, that's all the tools you need for the day. So I'll take you over to the canes which I've made, and we'll go from there. So those are my 4 canes, all the same height. One other thing I had when I was doing this insert for this, I actually had some left. So I haven't cut that off the right height, but I may include that, seeing how we go with the cane when I put things together. And when I'm putting a Kaleidoscope cane together, I want a triangular pattern. So that's what I'm looking for, to create something in triangular. So happily enough, I've got that could be one corner of my triangle. That could be another. And that could be the third. We could put the rose cane in the middle there. So you see I'm building a nice triangle here. And that would leave us some gaps. So we've got a nice bit of green here. So I could always put a bit of green down there. So let me just cut that off the right height and see where we go. So we could perhaps fit him in there. Now I mentioned I wanted some dark, so I'll probably put some dark round by the light here, And let's just put some pure dark. And what I'm looking at every time I'm creating a kaleidoscope, and it's quite good doing it from this top-down angle, what I'm doing when I'm adding my packing in, I want to create something that's going to fill in that shape. So you can see I've got a bit of a triangular shape there. So if I take some of this blue clay, probably don't need all of that. So if I roll a bit and then create a triangular shape, when I'm moving Kaleidoscope, trying to make it nice and even, then I can start packing that in there. But obviously it's going to be easier if we pack out the middle first. So I've got purple at the end of this cane here, and I've got purple on the outside of the rose there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pack a bit of extra purple right on the top there. If I do that, however, that's going to make the outside of this purple cane very difficult to see where that finishes. So what I might just do is put a bit of white around here first. So I've got some of the spare white I had left over. So I'm going to make sure it's the right height. And then I'll put that through the pasta machine, probably on setting number 2, and we'll see how it comes out. So if I just take this piece, I don't want it to go all the way around, just enough to cover one edge of it. So we're going to get that differentiation around the top. So I'll probably put it about there. See if we can get it most of the way around. Actually, that's pretty spot on. So I've just covered that with the white. So now we can put that back. And if I now take this purple, make it the right height. So I'm just pulling it longer here to make sure it's the right height. And I want it to curve around the top of this bit here. So now I can put that bit back in there, and that bit's now got something to attach it to. That bit can go in there, that bit's going to go there, and that bit can actually go in further there. So still just bearing in mind always this roughly triangular shape that we're going for, which we're creating. So we were going to have a bit of dark blue there. It'd be quite nice to have something similar on this side to act as a counterbalance on this side. So I could put the plain blue, but of course I've also got this, which was my Skinner blend. So what I might do is chop this in half and create this longer, and I'm also going to shape it. I'm going to change the shape of it, so the blue's going to be at the back and the white's going to be at the front, and I'm going to create a triangular shape. And what I'm looking for is creating something that's going to go in that gap there. So looking at the gap, it is triangular, but it's quite a long, uneven triangle. So let's see if we can make something just about the right shape to fit in there. That looks as though it's going to go. So there we go, and always check the other side, make sure you're packing it out both sides. I'm not going to worry about tiny little gaps in the middle like this, because when we start reducing it down, those tiny gaps will all disappear. What I do want, however, is this bit to be right touching the outside of my cane, so that when we put the triangular bit together, you're always looking for patterns that go down the outside, which is then going to repeat when you put the bits of these triangle together, which will make sense in a minute or two when we do the rest of it. Now here I've got another part of this dark Skinner blend here, so I might use this to pack out this shape. So if we put in background here, we've got an odd sort of shape here. It's almost like a circular shape going around there, sort of like a weird bit here. So let's see if we can make something that sort of shape. So seeing as that's got a round shape, what I will often do is take something like the rolling pin and effectively use that as if it's creating a bit of the shape around here. So I'm going to take that, pretend, let's make this into more of a rectangle shape to start with, because we've got a bit of a rectangular type shape going on there in this bit here. And then if I use this up like this, I can actually force this shape round to give me a bit of a curve. turn it up that way so you can see what I'm doing. So I'm actually forcing this round. So I've got a little bit going this side and then a lot going this side. So really making a bit of the curve. So hopefully we can make a shape that's going to roughly fit in to that gap. And if we take this piece out and fit him in, then hopefully when we put him back in, there we go. He is nicely fitted in. And because I've got the dark blue on the outside here, I can now take that piece, that triangular piece I made earlier, and use him to fill up any gaps we've got around the outside. And then he's standing a bit proud, so I will just chop off the excess. And then check the underneath is all going together as well. Yep, that's fine. So we haven't got too much more to do. We've got gaps here and we've got gaps here. And I have, of course, got this Skinner blend here still and some plain colour here. Now this one's very similar to the colour here, so I will probably use an extra bit of the blue on this one. And again, I'll make this into a triangle to fill the triangle gap we've got just in here. And take out any excess. And what I've got now is I've got a gap here which I can put a bit of a Skinner blend in, and I'm just going to check the colour. What I'll probably do is I'm going to, in the same way as we did the white outlining the purple flower here, I'm just going to take got a little bit of this blue left. I'm going to make a very thin line just to go on the outside here, so that when those two colours go together, there's going to be a little bit of a separation with the blue. So I'm just going to put that. Actually, no, I'm not even going to bother putting it through the pasta machine. It's such a small piece here. I'm just going to pull it with my fingers and then roll it. Get myself one nice flat edge, and then you can open up. I'm going to open up the kaleidoscope just a fraction, just enough to fit that in. And now, when we do that later, we can have the nice blue separating. Now I'm just pausing because I'm just trying to decide what I want to do. There's not much of a gap there at all. It's a very small triangle, but I think I will use the Skinner blend, but I don't need very much of it. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to decide which way I want it. So I want the white on the outside. So I'm actually going to chop down. So I'm going to take my blade and I'm going to chop straight down to create the shape I want to fit in. I know it's a bit wider than I need, but that's not quite high enough as yet. A bit higher still. And there we go. That piece is fitted in as well. So there we have our Kaleidoscope cane put together, so in that roughly triangular fashion. And all we need to do now, checking the top and bottom work and that they're all put together properly, is to start reduce that. So here's our cane ready for reducing. Now, good practice is that you leave it to rest for a while before you start reducing it, and the reason you would do that is that all the clays are at the same temperature and they will then reduce at the same rate. Personally, I'm kind of impatient. So if this was something complex, like a picture cane or something I spent a couple of days putting together, then I would actually take my time and I would leave it and I would rest it. However, this is Fimo Soft. I'm doing a kaleidoscope where I'm not that bothered about these patterns staying the same. I'm more interested in how the pattern's going to kaleidoscope when it's all finished. So what we need to do, we haven't got a huge amount of length here, it's only 2 inches, and obviously we need to pull this a lot longer and a lot thinner. There are some very, very good products on the market for doing this. They come in square blocks, they're acrylic blocks, and you can put them on the ends of your canes and they'll hold the canes in place and help with the reduction. And if your cane is small enough to fit onto those square blocks, please do use them. They are fantastic. However, I often make, for me this is quite a small cane, I often make very big canes, and when it's like this size, the blocks aren't big enough to put on. I also, in everything I do, need an awful lot of scrap clay, so I have never been overly worried about having scrap clay on the end of these canes, but I have over the years found a few tips and techniques for minimising the amount of clay that I'm wasting. So my first tip would be use one of these measuring sheets or a plastic laminated sheet if you don't have the cane blocks that you buy, and if your cane is too big to use for those, because what I do is the cane will actually stick to these. So the first thing I do is I will push in the sides of my cane, and what I'm doing, let me just turn it up so I can show you, I'm actually pressing in with my thumbs. You see I've actually made indents into that one, let me show you there, just down the middle to start with, and I do that all the way around, all three sides, whilst it's pressed down onto this sheet. So I'll just keep doing that for a minute, and of course because it's on the sheet you can turn it round really easily. So I'm just continuing to do that, pressing in, and I'm also pressing into the corners, so creating what I always describe as like a waist to my piece. So keep pressing in and pressing round. And if I hold it up, you can see what I'm doing there and how it's coming out with that pressing in. But you can also see that it's stuck to the measuring sheet, allowing me to work from the middle and also then down to the bottom. And that's all I'm doing. I'm just pressing inwards with my thumbs and my first fingers, just using those at the moment. And just doing that, by pressing in, it automatically becomes longer. Now sometimes you'll find that let's turn it so you can see this way. Can you see that this pink side is actually slightly smaller or hasn't grown as much as this yellow side? So what I'll then do, I will physically pull this corner up so it becomes the same height. So on my fast forwarded videos you'll quite often see me with my hand over the piece pulling it upwards, and that is what I'm doing. I'm actually pulling it upwards. So once you've worked on one half, so I'm just working on the bottom half here for a while, then you can peel the whole thing off, put it back down and then repeat, and now I'm going to be working on the other bottom half. And you'll see I'm already starting to get a bit of distortion here where it's all falling into the middle, but not too bad because it is adhering to the measuring sheet. And then every so often I will just pull up these corner sides. And so all I'm doing when I'm doing that is just literally just pulling these up to make them straighter and to make sure that all sides of my cane are the same height. And then I'll go back to doing it. So again I'm pressing in at that waist, making it smaller. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take it off. So I could just carry on doing that, and to be honest, if you want to, you'd end up with quite a long piece, along that way, and that would work perfectly well. But as I said, personally I'm not bothered about the ends becoming that distorted because I always need scrap clay. So now I'm going to start reducing it in the way I would more normally once it's moved off the measuring sheet. Now I've got quite a curve here in all the sides, so the first thing I need to do is to straighten that out. So I'm just pulling it wider. And now what I'm going to do, I'm going to start working on reducing this again. And I'm going to use these parts of my fingers. And again, this is why I quite like working in Fimo Soft, because anyone who's got problems like me here, this is actually slightly easier to do with the Fimo Soft clay than it is with some of the other brands of clay. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to use those and I'm pressing down, but I'm concentrating just on the bottom bits of my cane. And what you'll notice is that I go down the length once, turn the whole thing, go down, turn the whole thing, go down, turn the whole thing. Then every so often I will flip it around the other way, because it's amazing how you start with lots of pressure starting this end, and you get less probably as you get to this end. So I'll do that for a while. I may speed up the video because it's probably going to be a bit boring just sitting here and watching that, and then we'll see how we go. And when I start to change the technique, I'll pause the video and show you what changes I'm making. And what I am doing is every so often I'm turning it on its end again, just to make sure I'm not getting too much in the way of wastage. Okay, I have quite a long piece here now, so I'm going to stop there, mainly because I'm running out of board to put it on. So we'll have our moment of truth when we get to chop down through and see what the pattern is inside. That's one way. That's another way. And that's the third way. So I'm quite happy with that. I think it's come out as quite a nice pattern. There's a nice amount of dark in there, and then just amazing how just putting that white in there has really brought out or highlighted the purple of the petals there. So what I would do at this stage, I would take probably just one part of it. Now I know I'm going to have quite a bit of wastage on this end, so I will certainly chop off the wastage, see what we've got. Actually, that's not too bad. And you always use your other side. Now I know it's going to be a different height, but just looking at... Well, okay, so I'd have to say that's not too bad at all. In fact, there's probably some bits of that I could still use, because all of the bits there, all the elements, are still pretty much okay. So at this stage, I will take this piece that I've chopped off, and I've still got probably double that left to work with and do other patterns with, and I will decide I'm going to chop this in half and put two of the halves together and make them back into an equilateral triangle. So effectively I'm going to double up the complexity of the pattern. So I need to decide which way I'm going to put it together, so which bit I want to be the point still, and I think I'm going to go with the purple bit being the point. So because of that, I'm going to put effectively, I know this is the wrong way around, I'm going to put 2 points together. So if you look, that would give me a diamond shape. So to give myself a heads up and to make it easier to put those two bits together, rather than having each side equal, I'm going to shorten these sides so that when I put the two triangles, if I press in like that, so when I put the two triangles together, it'll be easier for me to do. It'll make sense in just a minute. So I'm going to do that by just putting it down on a measuring sheet, and I'm just really pushing in along the bottom. And then halfway up. So effectively I'm making it taller this way, and you can also do it by turning it on its side. So this is the long bit, so I'm pushing that bit down and then turning it on that side, pushing that bit down, and then straightening up the top. And hopefully you can see there I've just made that a much shallower triangle here. So now when we put this on this measuring sheet and cut to equal distance, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, so straight down the middle, I can now put these sides together much more easily than I would have been able to if I hadn't done that, and that will then become, this will become my flat side. So the thing to do is to put that down, and you marry up all the registration lines all the way up through your piece. And if you marry up the top and the bottom, you should end up with a pretty even match. And now I can press down because I know I've got that pink bit's going to be my top bit. So holding it to make sure the top bit doesn't come open, I'm just pressing down on the bottom to flatten it down. And you will, as per usual, get a slight distortion on the end, but that's fine. But we now have our flattened triangle. So I'm going to reduce this now in exactly the same way as I did a moment ago. Just by pressing down with my fingers just on the bottom, turning, pressing and rotating, because I want this to be much smaller, and then I can start kaleidoscoping it. Okay, now I'm going to take it back onto the measuring sheet, and I'm going to work with a bit of it because I don't want all of it. And that would be my next tip. When you're getting things absolutely precise, don't give yourself too much to work with. Just work with a small bit. So I've got here probably about 4 inches to work with, and I'm going to use this measuring sheet, and I'm going to make sure that every time I go down now, I'm going to concentrate on making sure this is exactly the right or the same on all sides. So I'm going to use these dark lines, and I'm going to press down along here until I'm happy that that's right. Turn over. Do the same on that side. Because the theory is, and of course what works in practice, is that if every side of your cane is exactly the same width, you will automatically have created an equilateral triangle which will kaleidoscope together perfectly. So just give it one more look. And don't forget as well, if you go too small, like it's slightly smaller here than it is the rest, you can just push it longer. There we go, push that back so it's the right height. So I think that is about ready to go. Okay, so we are ready to start slicing. Now again, best practice would be leave this to settle and rest for a short while, because you want to be able to take nice even slices, and we've manipulated a lot so it's very, very soft. But you know me, I'm impatient sort of girl when it comes to this, so I'm going to start taking my slices straight away. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to take off a nice flat piece to even up the end of your cane. My tip would be, for when you're cutting slices in for a kaleidoscope or anything else where you're going to match your slices together, don't worry about getting them thin. It is far more important for them all to be the same than for them all to be thin. So if you know your natural inclination is to cut a slice in a certain thickness, go with that. There's no right or wrong for this. You just cut slices that are comfortable for you to work with. So I'm going to make them relatively large on this one, just so it's easier for you to see. So I'm just going to do 6. I'm going to peel the rest away. Now, because I haven't waited and I haven't let the cane settle, these are very sticky, and even in that short amount of time they have gone out of shape. But we'll work with that, that's fine. Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you some tips for putting your slices together. Now, of course, the great thing about polymer clay is it sticks to itself, so we don't need to use anything else to start putting these slices together. The other thing is, when you're doing a kaleidoscope, virtually every kaleidoscope will have what I call a tell, whereby one side is different to the other. Even, I mean, if you're doing something like this, then each side is different, so you can put those together very easily. When you've put the two sides together, this side and this side, in theory, are going to be the same. However, there is always, I have found without fail, a tell within your slices of polymer clay. Now this one, because I did it so quickly and I didn't let it rest, there's loads of tells. You can see here that this piece goes out into a curve. This side of the petal is actually less long than this side. This bit green here is thicker than this bit. It doesn't matter what you see, and even in here you see there's a difference in these bits here. It doesn't matter what your tell is, as long as you can see by your tell which side to put together. So for instance, if I was putting those two bits together, that is wrong, because that side doesn't marry up with that side. However, if I turn that piece round to there, then those sides are going to marry up. And you just keep doing that all the way around. Now when you've been doing this for a while, you can actually put them all together in your fingers. What I tend to do is to do half at a time. Okay, so there's one half. And another reason why, to be honest, I didn't wait is because I know most of you are probably fairly similar to me, so you're probably not going to wait where you're sitting at home either. And there are some pitfalls if you don't wait, such as we're experiencing here, where it goes out of shape. And that way, because mine are the same, I can show you how to get these right again. So we've got our two sides here, and they would in theory go together. However, you can see how unstraight those two sides are. So here's my first tip. Put it back down on your measuring sheet, get your tissue blade, and with the blunt side of the blade, just persuade that front and back to become straight. Repeat with that side. Okay, so I've just put the tissue blade up there, pressed in that middle bit where it was sticking out slightly, and then with my fingers persuaded these two to come back. So now, when we pick these two pieces up, we should have a much easier time of fitting them all together. Okay, so there's our first slice, and I'll mess around with that slightly to manipulate it. In the same way as we just used the blunt end of the tissue blade to make those sides flat, you can also do this, and this is why I like doing hexagons, to push these flat as well. And already, just by doing that, look how much neater that looks. And then we will also always, because this is different pattern in different directions, if I take another 6 slices and put those together, then I'll show you the pattern that that makes. So there's the pattern when it comes out the other way. So those are our two patterns from that one piece of cane. And obviously we can manipulate this even more if we wanted to make other patterns. And don't forget, we have of course got all of this bit, which is still from the original pattern. So you can make all sorts of different bits and pieces with that. So I'll just finish these two pieces off for you just to show you how I will now make them nicely joined together. So having got our pieces cut, I will take a piece of, this is the baking parchment sheet. And again, I like doing this on small squares because it gives me lots of room to move around. And then with a blunt-ended knitting needle, because I'd created really nice points, although that may not have stayed equilateral triangle, because I'd created really nice points, my piece is all joined in the middle. So that is one tip I would give you. Always make sure when you're putting canes together, you really concentrate on the points, because that's what will make life easier for you this next stage. So now, if I hold this up, can you see we have got joins there? You can see where the seams are. But with the knitting needle, very, very gently, just roll over those joins from the outside towards the middle. And all you're doing is gently rubbing those seams together, so that in the end you won't see any seams whatsoever. And then there's a little bit sticking up in the middle, so I'm going to very gently use my knitting needle as a roller and roll on those. And then I'm going to get myself a little roller, and I am going to roll from the outside towards the middle, and I'm going to keep it towards me flat, so I'm going to do it 6 times, always going, turning, rolling. So turn, roll and turn, roll and turn. And then don't forget to neaten it up, we just use the blunt end, we don't cut off. We just push that back where it should be. And the other great thing about doing hexagonals, which is what this has turned out to be, is that you would always find that these sides should be parallel to each other. So that's another way to check. So for instance, that one isn't quite, so I know that one needs to go down there. So don't just look at the side you're pressing into, look at the opposite one as well. And then you can end up with a pretty perfect hexagonal, which you can either use obviously as a hexagonal or use as a circle out. And as I say, I will make some things with these patterns and bring you back when we're done. The other tip I would give you is never be afraid to change what you've made with your kaleidoscope. So whilst I'm quite happy with these, and they're quite nice patterns, and I will leave the rest of this cane to take some more slices off and to make some additional beads, what I'll do is I'll make 2 of the same, and then I'll do either side of a domed bead, and I'll show you some of those when they're finished later. What I have noticed is, when I look at this, I've got quite a lot of purple on this side, and quite a lot of the green and just the yellow, red rose on this side. So it's giving me these very distinct areas of colour. So what I can do to change that, I can take, and I've just taken here a couple of inches of my big cane still where it hasn't been changed, and I can add some extra things into this side to change the way the colour is spread around, and also I could add some extra green into this side. So if we put this to one side for a moment, leave that there. What I've done, I've just taken some plain white clay and covered it in a strip of purple. So this is some of the leftover clay I'd still got. I will take my knitting needle, and I'm going to push my knitting needle down the middle of that to create a nice groove. And then I'm going to have a little bit of extra purple clay. And let's just fit that in there. Just take the excess off my thumbnail. So I'll just create a little triangle there with that in the middle. And I'm now going to press this down and reduce this, because that's quite large in comparison to what I've got here. I want to make it smaller. So I'm just pressing down again, making it triangular. I'm going to try and keep it nice and even all the way through. And I'll probably even chop that in half at this stage. So I can always keep that bit to insert into another part of the big cane I've got left at some later stage. And just reduce this down again. So again, all I'm doing is I'm just stretching it out, pulling it longer. And when I've got it to about the size I want, I'm going to use one of these strips. You see there, it's roughly the right size for that. You can buy these, there's a couple of places you can buy these online, and I'll put the links in the video below. These are very good for creating indents into your canes. So for instance, I'm going to push down into that one, and I'm going to watch, because it's clear you can see exactly where you're pushing in. So I'm just pushing in and I'm creating a triangular insert. Can you see there where I'm pressing down? And because you've got it all the way down, so I'm just going to push in, do it that way around so you can see it. So I'm just putting it down on my side there, so I've got more pressure that I can push into, so I can really create a nice groove there. And then when you take it out, we can push this into the groove I've created. And these tools help you create a really nice even groove the whole way along your cane. So there we go, I have, just like that, inserted a triangular piece. I could do a green piece down here, but we'll just do that, just see what a difference that makes. So I'm just going to reduce that down, and then I'll bring you back when I've got that back being the right shape, back to that equilateral triangle, and then we'll kaleidoscope this one and see what a difference it makes having that extra insert into our cane. So here's the cane that I finished. So that was my little triangular insert that I put in, and then as before, when I had my piece, I then cut the whole piece into 2 and put the 2 bits together, and I put it together so that triangular piece sat together, so it created this little diamond in the middle, and it's amazing what a difference it makes. So if I show you again the 2 originals that I had, and then here is how the new ones come out. I think I like it with the extra inserts. It just breaks up that whole triangular movement here. So here we've got nothing in between. Here we've got it nicely broken up. And obviously you could have done it with lots of different inserts as well. There's no right or wrong again, just choose something that works for you. So never be afraid when you cut through your kaleidoscope for the first time. If you're not quite happy, just change it, add a few bits and pieces. And this is one of the reasons why you've probably realised by now, I never put all my pieces together and create those stacks where you've got a whole hexagon where the pattern matches. I always do cut the individual slices off and marry them up, and that way I find it's much easier to get a really good match. You can mess around with the patterns, make sure you match up each slice as it goes, and just go from there. So I'm going to carry on playing with this. I'm going to make a few more variations, make several beads, and then I'll bring you back and show you the finished product. So here we go, here's a finished kaleidoscope pattern. And then I just had a bit of a mess around with the canes really. This one, I added a little bit extra. I still had a tiny bit of that green insert that I'd done into the petal insert cane. So I put 3 of the bits together and added a tiny little bit of purple here and here and made myself another triangular cane. So that's how that one came out. This one, if you can see, there's an extra little added bit of purple just along here, and that was purely just a roll of purple that was added in. And then finally this one, I took that same triangle I had made, which we added earlier, of the purple and white, and added a tiny bit of green all the way along the inside, and that's how that one came out. So don't ever feel that you have to stick with what you came up with originally. Every time you change it, you come up with something else. So here are the leftover bits from all the different canes I came up with. And as you can see, I've still got a whole load left to play with, which I haven't even started altering or changing or kaleidoscoping in any way. So this one cane really will go a very long way for you. Here's an alternate colour scheme. This was the Natasha bead I made with this one, and that was doing a red and lilac rose, and orange and yellow petal cane with inset with blue outlined by red. The curve blend was blue, lilac and white, and then for the Snowflake Cane I used an emerald green with a bit of blue. Both those colours I actually made slightly lighter with some white, and then again with the Natasha bead I really liked the way that the dark blue was there with the whites, so I packed out with a little bit of extra dark blue, some green and some white. So that's another colour option for you, another variation, but using exactly the same canes. And that's what I just love about kaleidoscope canes. You can put them together in all the same way, but by the time you've reduced it and all those little pressures and you've done little movements and everything else, you will always come out with something slightly different. So they're just such good fun to make. And here are some of the beads that I've made with the cane. You can see they've come out, I've hand sanded and polished these. They've got a really nice shine on them. And I do these big ones. They've got 2 holes going through, so they'll make up nicely when they go into a necklace. This one's double-sided. It's nice sometimes to have a different pattern on either side. And then I've made slightly smaller ones as well. So those have got the same pattern on the same side, each side. And then smaller size again. So just working my way down and building up my repertoire of canes and all the different patterns you can get from your one initial kaleidoscope cane. Now, I haven't shown you how to make these beads and how to put them together because this is part of the Fun Kaleidoscope PDF tutorial that I sell. So I think that's about it. Hopefully you enjoyed that video and it's given you some inspiration to have a go and play with the canes and play with kaleidoscopes. I love kaleidoscopes. There's just so much you can do with them, and from that one cane I can end up with sort of 50 plus different patterns just by changing it each time and putting it all together. So as I say, I hope you enjoyed that one. If you did, don't forget to subscribe and to tick like. Subscribe if you want to be notified of any new videos that I post, and I'll come back with something different next time. Bye for now. Bye.